Hello, how's it going? In today's video, I'm covering the Elven Runestones and Ashes of Quel'Thalas from Chronicle Volume 2. So let's go! The Alliance was still bogged down in the hinterlands, so Orgrim and his half of the Horde marched on Quel'Thalas without any problems. On the way, Zul'jin stopped off at the Amani capital, Zul'Aman, and gathered even more allies. He got them all riled up nice and good, with the promise of spilling elf blood. Thousands of trolls poured out of Zul'Aman and were like, let's do this. This was the biggest army the High Elves had faced in thousands of years. The Horde bloody decimated the Elven Kingdom's outer holdings quicker than you can say Bob's your uncle. However, as they marched further north, many Death Knights and Amani Witch Doctors found their magics weren't working anymore. Eventually, Gul'dan figured out what the bloody hell was going on. When the High Elves founded Quel'Thalas, they erected a magical barrier around the kingdom, and they called it Bandinorial, otherwise known as Bindi Bandi Bardi-Doo, or the Gatekeeper. Not only did this series of runestones prevent the Burning Legion from detecting the High Elves' arcane magic, but it also weakened the powers of their enemies. Gul'dan claimed they'd only need to dismantle one of these runestones to restore the Horde's magic. He'd also then be able to use the relics to strengthen the Horde. If you're wondering how Gul'dan knows any of this, I imagine it's something he learned when he was poking around in Medivh's brain. Doomhammer considered this, and then was like, screw it, go ahead. He didn't trust Gul'dan, but so far the Warlock had proved useful and loyal to the Horde. Plus his spies within the Stormreaver clan had assured him there was no funny business going on. Unfortunately for him, he was unaware that his spies had switched sides, thanks to Gul'dan offering them power and whatnot. Bunch of jerks. Doomhammer still suspected the day would come sooner or later when Gul'dan would betray him and make a play for control of the Horde, but he never could have figured out the truth. The Warlock was intending to abandon the Horde, and Gul'dan had nearly amassed the power to do so. The Death Knights had turned out to be a little less loyal than he'd hoped, but he had the backing of two mighty clans, the Stormreavers and Twilight's Hammer. But he needed something else to ensure his journey to the Tomb of Sargeras would go smoothly, and Quel'Thalas' relics were just the thing. So, the sneaky knob and his followers quickly got to work dismantling one of the Elven Runestones. They chiselled away at the relic to build structures known as the Altars of Storms. Gul'dan then got started on an ancient ritual that had been used by the High Maul ogres many years ago. Basically, it was the ritual they'd used to give ogres two heads, and Cho'Gall was one of the few peeps that knew this ritual because he'd overseen many of them back in the day. It wasn't long before two-headed ogre magi emerged from the altars. They were pretty damn powerful, but even better than that, they immediately swore loyalty to Gul'dan. He now had the strength he needed, and all that remained was to wait for the right time. Meanwhile, with the runestones taken care of, the Death Knights and other spellcasters found their powers had returned, so they started their march towards Silvermoon City. As they crossed the countryside, they caused quite a bit of a ruckus, terrorising settlements and killing any elf they came across. And King Anasterium wasn't a big fan of this. He called on his greatest generals to stop the Horde's advance. Elf magi and rangers spread out across the region to resist Orgrim and his forces, but they didn't have to fight alone, because Turalyon, Illyria and half the Alliance army soon arrived. Turalyon rallied his soldiers and launched attacks against the Horde, whilst Illyria met with the king in Silvermoon City. And she was like, mate, do us all a favour, pledge to the Alliance. And Anasterium was like, don't need to tell me twice. He was furious about the Horde's assault. A lot of elves had died. And for what? Plus, he was probably a little bit embarrassed that he'd previously underestimated just how much of a threat the Horde posed. So he offered the full support and backing of Quel'Thalas to the Alliance. Unfortunately, any hope this might have given anyone of a quick victory over the Horde was immediately ruined, because the Red Dragons arrived. The Dragonmaw Orcs had finally learned how to mount their winged captives for battle. Dozens of these monstrous creatures appeared in the sky, and the Wildhammer Griffin Riders, well, they'd never fought against dragons before, so they kinda cheesed it. The Orcs and their mounts then swooped down on the Alliance armies and bathed them in flame. A firestorm enveloped the forests around the region, and smoke blotted out the sun. The dragons themselves weren't enjoying this at all. Whilst the Orcs on their backs were like, this is bloody brilliant, the dragons were like, oh god, I'm so sorry, good sir, please forgive me. Some of them even cried. The firestorm forced most of the elf defenders to flee back to the city to seek shelter. The elves had no physical weapons that could stop the Horde and their dragons from conquering the city, but they did have something else, the Sunwell. Using the fount's energies, they summoned an immense shield around the city. The Horde tried to smash against it over and over again, but it didn't give way. Even the dragon's fire couldn't breach it. At this point, Orgrim's patience was wearing pretty thin. Attacking Quel'Thalas wasn't even part of the plan. Lordran's capital was the priority, and this was just a bloody waste of time. I mean, sure, they hadn't yet satisfied the Amani Pact, but they had Ogre Magi now, and dragons. The elves aren't exactly going to recover from the damage they'd caused already anytime soon. Sod this, and sod the trolls. So he immediately got started on planning the next stage of his campaign. They needed a route from Quel'Thalas to Capital City, one that would catch the Alliance by surprise. And we're leaving it there! In the next Volume 2 video, King Perinold of Alterac is going to be a jerk, and then the Horde are going to attack Capital City. As always, thanks very much to those of you who support the channel as patrons. Links in the description if anyone's interested in supporting the channel in that way. If you enjoyed this video, like, subscribe, all of that bollocks. And all that's left to say is, thanks for watching, and see ya!